For years and years, we've known that the obedient and God-fearing laptops are divided into categories. Business laptops, gaming laptops, laptops to match with a purse or a beard, MacBook Air, laptops for mowing the lawn, and so on. But despite this segmentation, at least some manufacturers seem to have not given up to the search for the Holy Grail, the all-around good laptop. So from time to time, there comes a model that's borderline, with multiple personalities and wants to be everything. And some succeed to a greater or lesser extent, others fail. And in their attempt to do everything, they end up doing nothing well. Nonetheless, users seem to have not abandoned the idea of a laptop to rule them all. And lately, I notice an increasingly pronounced tendency towards such all-encompassing solutions. Sure, this ideal is loaded with contradictions. I want the laptop to be light and thin, but also powerful and silent, to have a large display, yet the laptop itself should not be too big or too heavy, so it can be carried anywhere, to get your work done at the job, but also to be able to play a relaxing game in the evening, not to be very expensive, but still performant, and so on. All this wrangling is reminiscent of the conditions that the ideal man must meet in the eyes of women. And we know that the ideal man, like the ideal laptop, are characters from fairy tales. But this quest for such a laptop hides something else. A kind of nostalgia for the times when a laptop was just a laptop. That is, the beginnings when this segmentation did not exist, and you didn't need 7 devices for 7 different activities. And something else. This segmentation of laptops is not something that came naturally, as we are now inclined to believe. I was talking the other day with a senior executive of a well-known laptop manufacturing company, whose name I do not have permission to reveal, and he was saying, when we created gaming laptops, we did not do it out of a necessity for users, but out of a desire to double our sales, trying to compel the user to buy not 1, but 2 devices for 2 different activities. Interesting, right? Returning to this all-encompassing desire for the good all-round laptop, well, today I have such a specimen in testing. The ROG Flow X16 2023 is a veritable Swiss Army knife, and then some. Although it is a big bad wolf for gaming, look, you can flip over the screen and you can transform it faster than you'd say laptop into a 16-inch tablet. And that's not all. When necessary, it can also transform into a gaming PC, because the thing also has a proprietary connector that allows you to attach an ROG XG Mobile, that is an external GPU with RTX 4090 inclusive. Yes, Asus has outdone themselves with this model. Apparently, it really is the grail. It's good for gaming, the specifications and performance justify such expectations. It's good for content creators too, because it's powerful and also has an excellent screen that allows photo and video editing. It's also relatively thin and portable, and on top of that, it turns into a tablet. What the heck more could you want? If you are in search of such an all-around good laptop, apparently the Flow X16 seems to be the answer to these prayers. But is it really so? I mean, do all these expectations check out in practice? This 2023 GV601 series of the ROG Flow X16 contains 3 versions, as they are listed on the manufacturer's website, and they differ only by the graphics card. You can choose between RTX 4050, 4060 and 4070. Here there are some more nuanced differences. While the RTX 4060 and 4070 have a TGP of 120 watts, which is 100 default plus a 20 watt boost, the more frugal 4050 reaches 105, that is 80 default plus a 25 watts boost. And the amount of video memory differs. While the RTX 4060 and 4070 come with 8 gigs of VRAM each, the 4050 comes with a more modest 6 GB. Otherwise, the specifications can be said to be identical. All 3 have the same powerful and hungry Intel Core i9 13900H processor, the boys didn't mess with half measures, the same display, we'll get to that in a moment, 16 gigs of DDR5 RAM at 4800 mega transfers per second, a capacity that can be expanded up to 64, and 1 or 2 terabyte PCI Express 4.0 and NVMe SSDs. Storage is the second difference between the versions in this series. While the models with 4060 and 4070 come equipped with 2 terabytes, The model with 4050 comes default with 1 TB of storage. All three have the same hefty 90 Wh battery, and one last difference is the charger capacity, which for the model with RTX 4070 reaches 280 watts, while for the other two models in the series it is 240. That's it. The model I received for testing is the top one with RTX 4070, 32 gigs of RAM and 2 TB storage. But beyond specifications and features, how does this laptop actually behave in gaming? Well, let's find out. I started with Cyberpunk 2077, which at 1440p settings on Ultra, with DLSS on and Ray Tracing Ultra, averaged 49 FPS. Without ray tracing, but also without the crutch called DLSS, it climbed in the same 1440p resolution to 54 FPS. I also ran the game in Full HD resolution to increase the load on the CPU, and with ray tracing and DLSS off, I reached 121 FPS, a more than decent value, well over double that obtained in 1440p. I ran the game in Full HD with ray tracing on Ultra and DLSS on and got 66 frames per second, which is just over the psychological limit of 60 FPS. For a more general picture, I also ran Assassin's Creed Mirage, and the results were as follows. In 1440p with everything on ultra high, I reached 102 FPS, while in Full HD resolution, with the same maximized settings, I reached 126 FPS. And I also ran some synthetic benchmarks. I'm not a big fan of synthetic tests, after all, you don't play Cinebench or Furmark, but they remain a useful tool, especially when you want to make comparisons or have some performance benchmarks. In Cinebench R23, the multi-core score reached 19,114 points with a maximum consumption of 126 watts. The processor climbed in frequency up to 5.4 GHz and the temperature reached 96-97 degrees Celsius. I also measured the temperature at the case level, and the maximum was 38-39 degrees in the area near the back exhaust. Unfortunately, the noise level was also high. I measured over 55 dB in the exhaust area, and moreover, the sound had high and annoying notes because the fans are so narrow. Running Cinebench in a loop, after about 4 cycles, the processor limited its frequency to 3.9 GHz, dropped to a consumption of 80 watts, and unfortunately, the temperature remained close to the maximum value of 100 degrees, more precisely at around 97-98. And here the first contradictions appear. And the most obvious is that the Flow X16 has to reconcile an extremely powerful configuration with some at least ambitious dimensions. That is, a thickness of just 2.2 centimeters and a weight of just 2.2 kilograms, with a CPU famous for how hot it can get and with a potent graphics card. Sure, it's delightful to see how much Asus has tried to reduce dimensions and weight, but these choices impact the thermal behavior of the laptop. The cooling system is undoubtedly a gem, and Asus have resorted to the whole panoply of innovations and optimizations at their disposal. A tri-fan system, meaning 2 fans plus 1 auxiliary in the middle, 6 heat pipes, liquid metal, the whole shebang. But the laws of physics are the only ones that cannot be fooled. After all these rather dry technical considerations, which are ultimately essential, let's now turn our attention to the appearance, which for many remains decisive in choosing a laptop. And the Flow X16 actually looks cool. The laptop is elegant, and for what it's designed to do, it can be considered downright thin and light. The same characteristics that cause headaches in terms of temperatures are those that do it honor in terms of appearance. 2.2 centimeters at its thickest part and just over 2 kilograms are anorexic specs for its category. The construction is solid, with aluminum on both the lid and the bottom cover, and a magnesium and aluminum alloy in the palm rest and the keyboard area. The closing and opening system has 2 hinges placed at the ends, kinky engraved with the birth date of the Republic of Gamers brand, 0206, meaning February 2006. I've always said that I'm not a fan of this system with 2 narrow side hinges, but in this model's case, the fact that the screen needs to flip over is what determined the choice of this construction solution. Even so, the hinges resist just enough when closing and opening the lid, and the assembly doesn't rattle or squeak. However, I noticed that the screen flexes a bit when you apply pressure in the center below, but not so much that it bothers me or makes the laptop feel fragile. Also, upon opening, you will notice a rather large space between the actual chassis and the lid, a situation due to the need for the screen to be able to flip over, and on the other hand, because of the hot air evacuation that is done through the back of the chassis. I've always said that I'm not a fan of this solution because it brings hot air to the base of the screen, and imagine how hot it is in the case of a laptop with a Core i9 13900H. Of course, Asus swears that all this heat does not affect the display in any way, but I can't say that I feel comfortable with this choice. This ample evacuation from the back is complemented by another one on the right side, and the intake happens underneath. On the back of the laptop we find a large rubber insert that goes from one side to the other, and another 5 small inserts meant to raise it from the level of the desk so it can breathe. However, be careful when working or playing from your lap or bed to not block the intakes on the back. It is advisable to use a stand or a cooling pad when working anywhere other than at a desk. Another role of this feet on the back is to support the lid when the Flow is used in tablet mode. Although the laptop is thin, the connectivity is rich and varied. On the right side, next to the exhaust slot, you find 2 full USB 3.2 ports, a microSD card reader and the anorexic power button. On the opposite side, that is on the left, we have the power port for the 240 or 280 watt brick, depending on the model, a full HDMI 2.1 port and an USB Type-C with Thunderbolt 4, which also doubles as a power port for a more refined 100 watt charger, which comes with the laptop and which is just fine to carry around when traveling. That is, if you don't want to participate in the strongest man competition with the 280 watts brick in your backpack. However, be aware that this charger does not unleash the full power that this laptop is capable of. Also on this side, you find the proprietary port for the ROG XG Mobile, as well as a 3.5mm jack port for headphones and microphone. And this connectivity leads me to think of another scenario, which you will immediately see is perfectly justified by other features of this laptop, namely content creation. The fact that you have a Thunderbolt 4 for fast external storage, that you can add an external GPU with up to a 4090, that you have an HDMI 2.1 and a card reader indicates a serious orientation towards content creation, whatever that may mean. Video editing, 3D graphics, photo editing, etc. This orientation is further reinforced by a sticker, one that recommends the use of NVIDIA Studio drivers for such activities. So, this is why the Flow X16 is a 2-in-1, not just as a laptop and a tablet, but also as a device dedicated to both gaming and productivity. And the wired connectivity is complemented by a well-represented wireless one with Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.3. Moving forward with the design and construction, we come to the screen, which in my opinion is la pièce de résistance of this model. Usually, gaming laptops prioritize brute power, as is natural, but to reduce costs, they come with some duds of screens, on the principle that the gamer is not demanding in terms of color accuracy or uniformity and brightness. This is not the case here, as I said that the Flow X16 aims to serve both gaming and content creation scenarios, and the display is clearly oriented towards this second activity. The content creation story is reinforced by the presence in the package of a stylus with 4096 pressure points for drawing, graphics, etc. But what excites me most is the enormous visible surface of this screen. The 16 inches are fully exploited by the extremely narrow and elegant edges. Even the usually very wide bottom edge here is thin and elegant, and beneath it is discreetly written ROG Flow. The entire laptop has a pleasant texture to the touch and which behaves unexpectedly well with fingerprints and grease. Somehow, the laptop manages to stay clean, so this fingerprint-resistant surface is not just a marketing gimmick. Instead, you will have them right on the glossy screen when you use its touch function, and even more so when you use the Flow in tablet mode. On the effective interaction side, you have a generous keyboard, well spaced, not noisy at all, with large and easy to hit keys. The top ones, as well as page up, page down, home and end, are narrower, but not so much that it bothers me, and above the keyboard you have another row of 4 quick keys, volume up, down, mute, and a shortcut for the Armoury Crate application, from where you can even control the RGB lighting of the keyboard. And speaking of that, the RGB lighting is quite discreet and about the only visible element that suggests you're dealing with a gaming device. And this discretion is general to this model. It's not a Christmas tree that screams gaming through every pore, so you can just as well use it in a productivity environment without anyone thinking you came to work with your teenage child's gaming PC. Returning to the keyboard, I admit it's a matter of taste, but I liked it. Some might object that it's a bit too soft, but I like the slightly elastic feel of the keys. The 1.7mm travel is also appropriate, neither too big nor small. Going further down, the touchpad is large, fast and precise, centrally positioned, and you have enough space around it. The only complaint would be that it has a rather long travel when pressed. Anyway, no one stops you from using an external mouse, which I think is advisable if you are serious about gaming or productivity. And now let's focus a bit on the pièce de résistance, namely the display itself. It's part of Asus's Nebula HDR series and it's a darn fine mini LED. It's also durable, being covered by a layer of Gorilla Glass 3, a natural choice for a device that can be used as a tablet and with a stylus on top of that. But truly impressive were the measurements. In HDR mode, the brightness exceeds 1000 nits, which is the maximum limit our old colorimeter can reach, but the manufacturer says that the peak is at 1100 nits. Color reproduction is very good, 100% DCI-P3, as well as color and brightness uniformity. The display is Pantone validated, and in terms of HDR, it even supports the popular Dolby Vision standard. But all these characteristics, especially those related to brightness, were predictable, given that we're dealing with a mini LED panel with 124 dimming zones. This translates into very good control of the various zones, hence the good uniformity. But all these are characteristics that primarily interest content creators. And for gaming, the screen is at least just as capable. A refresh rate of 240 Hz that can be achieved with the screen resolution set to Full HD, 120 Hz with the display at maximum resolution, that is QHD, and a response time of 3 milliseconds. The gaming specifications do not end here. For variable refresh rate, we have both G-Sync and FreeSync, as any self-respecting gaming device would. One last issue I'd like to point out is the format, namely that 16:10, which has started to become popular again. This translates into a more ample vertical space, especially useful in office-type applications. What else can I tell you? That games look excellent, movies likewise, especially those from streaming services that also support Dolby Vision, and about photo and video editing that require accuracy, I need not say more. And now let's talk a bit about the user experience, because in the end, that's what counts. We thus have two major scenarios for which this laptop is very well suited, and in both, you can use it both as a proper laptop and as a desktop replacement, if you attach that excellent external GPU. Gaming and productivity, as if you had two dedicated devices in one. On the gaming side, you have pretty much all the features a dedicated rig should have. The most potent processor of its generation, a respectable selection of dedicated graphics cards, and a fast screen with more than decent response time. If you want even more, you can attach an RTX 4090 via XG Mobile and turn it into a true gaming PC. On the productivity side, the same powerful components help without a doubt, but also the precise and well-calibrated screen, dedicated ports like Thunderbolt and HDMI 2.1, by the way, you can comfortably connect several monitors, but also the extra performance that an external GPU brings you. And as if Asus hadn't stretched enough with this Flow X16, there's also a third scenario, that of a graphics tablet. The screen flips over and sticks to the back of the laptop, and voila, you have a genuine graphics tablet of no less than 16 inches on which you can work with that stylus found in the package. I said graphics tablet and not just a tablet because in my opinion that's the purpose of such a powerful device. Sure, no one stops you from working office tasks in this format, but wouldn't it be a shame? It's clear that it's a solution thought out more for designers, graphic artists, etc. And undoubtedly, there's also a practical side to this layout. The keyboard locks automatically, and the Flow X16 can be used as a tablet on your knees, in bed to watch a movie, although at over 2 kilograms it sort of breaks your hands, or when you simply want a small footprint and tactile interaction. It's also cool that the screen automatically changes its format from portrait mode to landscape and vice versa. So here are a multitude of ways to use this Swiss Army knife that is the Flow X16. And that's why I think it's also the closest device this year to that goal of one laptop to rule them all. Basically, Asus is telling you with this model that you no longer need a dedicated gaming laptop, a work one, and a tablet on top of that, because you have them all in one. How well does it do this? Well, more or less. We've seen that these choices come with certain compromises, especially in terms of thermal and noise performance. It was to be expected that such features and this compact silhouette would be hard to reconcile. Everyone decides for themselves whether these compromises are acceptable or not. I'll end here, but not before, as usual, steering you up to share your opinion in the comments. What do you think of the Flow X16? What do you like and dislike about it? And last but not least, how do you feel about this idea of a laptop that does it all and incorporates several categories and segments into a single device? Please subscribe to our tiny channel and see you next time.